Okay, so question 5 wants us to figure out what x values, or what value of c, same thing, where the mean value theorem guarantees that the average rate of change equals the instantaneous rate of change. So instantaneous rate of change is going to be derivative. This derivative is certainly a little bit harder because you're going to have to do product rule here. A few people asked about, could you just distribute this x? And the reason why you can't distribute this x is because of order of operations. Order of operations says you have to deal with this exponent first before you can multiply. So derivative, we have to take product rule. So the derivative of x times the square root of x plus 5 left alone plus x left alone times the derivative of x plus 5 to the 1/2. So you would need to bring the power down, lower the power by 1, and consider chain rule, but the derivative of x plus 5 would be 1. So multiplying by 1 doesn't do anything, but chain rule is still one of the most forgotten things. So when you guys get to a different question and you get stuck, make sure that you consider chain rule. Okay, so this is got x times 1 in the top, a 2 times the square root of this on bottom, negative exponent. I'm moving it to the denominator, making it a positive exponent. Okay, so technically that is the derivative, but I'm going to have to set this equal to the average rate of change and solve. And that's going to be kind of problematic here. I really want this to be one big fraction, not two terms like this. So on this left one, I'm going to multiply the top and the bottom by 2 square root of x plus 5. This forces these to have the same denominator. So I did that in red. So now that they have a common denominator, I can push those together into one big fraction. I've got 2 times the square root of x plus 5 times the square root of x plus 5 would just be what? Okay, and then I've got this plus x. So over here it looks like we have 3x plus 10 on top, and then this common denominator on bottom. So again, harder derivative because it's product rule, but luckily we've at least been practicing that for a little bit. Okay, so that represents the instantaneous rate of change. What mean value theorem tells us, as long as this is continuous and differentiable between these two values, then there should be somewhere where it equals the average rate of change. So that would be the slope formula part. Okay, and just for me, I know this is the part I struggle with the most just because I often plug in things too quickly, so this is where I would slow down. F of 0 would be 0 times the square root of 5 minus negative 5 times the square root of 0 over 5, and 0 minus 0 would be 0. 0 divided by 5 would be 0. So it looks like the average rate of change was 0. So really this could also be called Rolle's theorem. This is a specific case of mean value theorem where the average rate of change is 0. Okay, so when does a fraction equal 0? When the numerator equals 0. If you want to think about it algebraically, you could multiply both sides by this so that those cancel, but on the right side, 0 times anything is 0. So subtract 10, divide by 3, negative 10/3 should be your card number 6. Guess this was card number 5. Okay, did you find your mistake in there? Okay. Anybody else that was going to ask about number 5 need to Ask a more direct question before we move on. Yeah.
So what do we do for the square root of x plus 5 to get it to have
Here?
2 square root of x plus 5 below it?
This over here?
Yeah.
Well, to force these two smaller fractions into one bigger fraction, I have to get a common denominator. So this one had a denominator of 1, and this one had a denominator of 2 square root of x plus 5. So the least common denominator would be a 2 square root of x plus 5. So to make this denominator be that, I put that in red, you also have to multiply the top. You have to multiply the top and the bottom by the same thing. Then once these were the same, I could push them together into one fraction. And here I've got 2 times, so 2 times square root of something times the square root of itself is just going to give you that thing. Square root of 3 times square root of 3 is 3. Square root of 5 times square root of 5 is 5. Square root of x plus 5 times square root of x plus 5 is just going to be x plus 5. And then this plus x is this plus x. So I know common denominators are not always the easiest, especially when your question's messy, but they come up often enough that we have to practice dealing with those.